Okay, today I'm going to talk about why I think the study of knowledge, so epistemology, is the most powerful mental model, we'll say, for context engineering and interfacing with large language models. At its core, epistemology is the study of what you can know. And in relation to using language models and agents and everything we build on top of these things, ruthless pursuit of clarity, the ability to understand what you're asking for, what do you want, why do you want it, how do you want it done, what are your typical parameters for it being done a specific way, all the way down to describing your own mental model, right? So starting with describing your mental model, then effectively communicating that outside of your head. So this is I don't know, let's call the oldest problem humanity has dealt with is how do we communicate with one another in an effective way. Well, the really cool thing is that communication kind of generalizes. So when you ask, oh, does that person have the context on what we're talking about? That ability to almost empathize, but like not emotional empathize, we will say understand the mental state of what information they could possibly have applies to communicating to your language model. I believe this to be so effective. It is, I think, better than being good at statistics, better than knowing being a really good data scientist, better than understanding machine learning. Those things are obviously far more. excuse me. Those things are obviously far more effective for actually building these large language models, but for interfacing them and getting them to produce output that is actually valuable to solving a real end problem, it's applied epistemology, which is what I think context engineering is applied epistemology. It goes back to that communication gap of I know, well, what do I want to know? How do I get that information? How do I communicate that information? How do I distill the information? And how do I get that from my mind to a external system like a language model? There are two gaps there. That's like your want, right? So gap one is your understanding to clarity on that problem set, and then communicating that clarity to, in this case, the language model. So why does this matter? This matters because as we get more powerful systems, we are making this trade-off. We're getting more leverage. So you can spawn more agents to do more things, to write more code, to write more emails. But we're losing visibility. That's the trade-off. So this XY axis, right? You get high leverage. Ideally, you want to be up here. High leverage, high visibility. You have like clairvoyant vision and know how to describe that perfectly, so you can take advantage of all the leverage you now have. More often than not, we're actually over here. We are using incredibly advanced systems without knowing how to get them to do what we want, not because of some arbitrary problem with we need better models or we need better tooling or whatever. We don't know how to communicate clearly what we want. And that is actually the main bottleneck for interfacing with, I think, the vast majority of AI systems. It is clarity. The way you solve clarity is ruthless. The way you solve for clarity is ruthlessly interrogating your own knowledge and understanding how you can communicate it to solve for what you want, how do you communicate that externally, and how to actually execute that. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So if you're not familiar with what I work on, I build context operating systems primarily for go-to-market teams. And what a context operating system is we take your scattered context, your scattered context such as transcripts, working documents, CRM data, analytics, everything that your business spins off of these artifacts that cause you to spend endless time context switching and repeating yourself to your AI agents over and over again. We fix those problems by centralizing everything into a living source of truth that is in the form of a markdown knowledge graph. I like the markdown knowledge graph because it is simple. There is nothing but the agent, the context, and the user. So remove as many moving parts as possible. Simple is effective. In the course of building these systems, they kind of grow. They get these emergent properties of, I can put my transcripts in here, and I can put the app I'm working on in here, and I can have the agent connect the dots across these two things to figure out, hey, actually, my customers, I thought we're talking about this pain point, XYZ. We'll call it actually pain point 1. I thought pain point 1 was the number one pain point my customers are having. Well, looking at all of our transcripts across the past 3 months, they're really talking about pain point 3. And that's because you now have leverage to go and query across all of those transcripts and actually pull out real insight. I think more than ever, it is exceedingly important to understand what you can know, because our systems now confidently lie to us. If they could lie, right? They generate text that makes a confident statement that is bullshit, right? It's not true. That's a hallucination. So interrogating your context and grounding it in a knowledge base like the one I build for myself and my clients is how you make these things valuable and far more reliable. And the core way I found this to be actionable is around something called falsifiability. So what is falsifiability? All falsifiability means it's the ability to categorize a claim as true or false. You can falsify it. A weakly falsifiable claim is something like you guessing what I'm thinking right now, or something where there's a bunch of moving parts, it's unbounded, and you have no way to verify it. This is the most important one. So a high falsifiability claim is something like 2 + 2 = 4. That is something you can verify for yourself, counting it whatever you want to say. Why does this matter? So at their core, language models are basically like dream machines that sometimes align with reality. That isn't maybe the most technical, the most architecturally correct analogy, but I think it's useful nonetheless, and it's useful because it features hallucinations at the center. They are not like this problem to work around. They are core to how these things function. So if we can't eliminate hallucinations, we have to find a way to work with them and make them work for us, which is what we're doing with falsifiability. We are basically taking the probabilistic nature of these machines and reducing down the deviation. We're making the system more reliable. So I'd rather have a system that is 85% accurate all the time than a system that is 95% accurate, but will sometimes swing down to 35% accurate or 60% accurate. We are basically making the thing more reliable by making it so we can by making it produce claims that are more verified. Okay, so when do you need to solve for falsifiability? It really depends on something I'm calling, or I guess called, context sensitivity. And basically what this means is how much outside information do you need to give the model for it to correctly assess the situation and produce relevant outputs. Taking our favorite example, 2 + 2 = 4, you don't need to give it any knowledge, or any outside information to do that, because that's in the training data. A high context sensitivity problem is one where you're working with a brand new Python package, a brand new framework, whatever it is not going to be information that the model has, so therefore you have to provide that context to it. So thinking about that as this sliding scale up and down, when you're working with, hey, I want you to assess my entire business based on our transcripts. Obviously, you have to give it the transcripts. That's like an easy thing to assess. But once you start breaking that down, you understand, you can start figuring out where the nuances in almost like the physical shape of this context is, and when you have to give it the right information at the right time to solve your specific problem. So, just to contextualize what we're looking at here, by the way, this is a skill I made for myself based off of that write up I did several years ago. I've been using this epistemological, sometimes it's a hard word to say, this epistemological content skill um, all the time. And I've been using it in conjunction with a command line tool I built I'm calling Taste Matter. That the end vision here is basically it knows the context better than the user. It knows it better than myself. And you can see how, I think you can see how fitting these two together will be extraordinarily valuable. But to spell it out, to make it very concrete, the core tension I'm finding in all of these systems, going back to our leverage and visibility trade off, there is what I think my system is doing um, in how it's working. So, like, assuming, hey, we get 1 plus 1 equals 5,000, I'm making it up, but you get these emergent properties. Well, how did it do that? I have these assumptions around what context I'm giving it and why that makes it work the way it does, but they're assumptions. So having this tool increases my visibility for no additional leverage cost. And you could do things that are really, really powerful that are basically coming down to reducing the number of assumptions you have around the way your system works. So this example right here, where I have it called the context query skill, and it basically takes the whole the command line, which lets Claude go and talk to its own JSON files and file activity access stuff, and basically paint a picture of, hey, this is how this system produced this end result, and here's what you've actually been doing with the system, producing something where this is like a heat map, right? So these are the systems, or these are the files and skills and everything, or like this one's specific as a snapshot of that. But this is where you're actually actively engaging in the system. And then over here, right? So the context is the taxonomy and the ontology are supposed to be these like governing system, or governing files that are always used more or less and tell the agents how to label files, worker files, and it's turning out that, or it turned out that I'm not using these things pretty much at all. Versus some files are meant to be not accessed often, like a knowledge base entry. These things should have been on fire based off of the heat level, right? Sorry, but they're not. So now they're basically an anti-pattern. They're vestigial. They are making it harder for me to actually understand what I need to do to optimize my system to write code faster, or maybe not write code faster, whatever I'm optimizing it for. In this case, like context lookup and context restore is one of the things I'm solving for with Taste Matter. But it is actively hindering my visibility into my own system, and that's actively making it harder for me to make decisions and streamline the system to produce real valuable results for me. So that's like the very applied epistemology I'm doing myself today, and I'm doing similar things on all of my client systems of like, hey, like we're basically trying to solve for interpretability. Like we start interpretability is a machine learning concept. This is interpretability of context. I'm finding as these systems get bigger and bigger, you have to give yourself that visibility edge. So two things. If you are interested in trying out Taste Matter as an alpha user, I'm starting to open up a few slots. I need help testing the thing, beating it up. So if you're interested in that, hit me up. And I am open to releasing this skill I have, this epistemological context audit. So basically what I do with it, I have it if I'm starting a new project or a new context window in a session. I say, hey, call the epistemological skill and enumerate all the stuff we need to figure out. There's a ton of stuff down here about assumption enumeration, and I'm finding it's making Claude Code far more accurate and far more reliable. So if you are interested in that, leave a comment, and if enough people want it, I'm happy to release it. But thank you so much for your time. I really hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.